All right, Curtis Howe here with Smart Social. Super excited to introduce a good friend of mine, Frank Bonin, with Action Coach, Wasatch Action Coach to be specific. And we're going to have a fun conversation today about businesses. What are some of the problems that commonly happen among business owners, and what are the core foundational pieces that they're missing? This is a common thing that I know I've had in my businesses, and I've seen in other people's businesses, where you get a business started and you get running, but you forget to put the core pieces underneath you that help you to actually build a business off of. To go from owning a job to having a system that's running is a big change. And if you don't put those foundational pieces in there, it just becomes really hard to run a business. So we're going to talk about some of these things today. So Frank, tell me, what are some of the major questions or common problems that business owners run into when they're trying to grow that business out there? Like, what are those things that they should be doing that they're not, basically?
Absolutely. So before I go into that question,
Sure.
I'll just tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah,
a little bit about Wasatch Action Coach. So Action Coach has over 1,000 coaches around the world, works with over 15,000 businesses around the world to help those businesses succeed and grow every day. We have a very proven system. And in addition to that, with Wasatch Action Coach, what I bring to the table is I bring a history. I've been in five different startup companies. Sorry, I had to think the number out there for a second. 5 different startup companies. I joined the government and took a job where I was starting governmental organizations in multiple locations. One of them had over 350 people. More locally, I established the very first aircraft maintenance unit for the Air Force Reserve Command at Hill Air Force Base. Program valued at billions of dollars, and critical to the national security. So now that I'm no longer in those roles, and I'm pursuing personal endeavors and commercial endeavors outside of the government and the military, when I saw the opportunity with Action Coach, to help businesses grow and succeed and help people achieve the things that I want, I jumped on it. This is exciting to me. People, when they start their businesses, they start a business because they're passionate about something. They provide a service that is fantastic. They make the widget, maybe the best widget in the region, maybe the best one in the world, but they're not passionate about how to run a business and how to grow that business, and they don't know how to. It's scary. That's one of the reasons why people say they're scared of businesses. Businesses fail. It's a risky endeavor. In fact, being a business owner is less risky than being an employee. If you think about it, how many businesses fail compared to how many employees get fired, terminated, laid off, whatever the term is. Sure, businesses fail. Everything's risk. But if you approach business with the systems that work, the processes that work, business can work very, very well.
Well, that's an interesting point that you bring up, thinking about realizing that most people, I think, when they think about a job, having a job versus being a business owner, they see being a business owner is way more risky than having a job. Mm-hmm. Having a job feels more secure to them. And so they struggle to make that leap, right, because they're worried about that. But when you really think about it, you're not any more at risk in your own business than you are at your job, because you still have to work hard. Absolutely. You still have to perform. You still have to do what you said you're going to do. So same with your job. I mean, if you're not doing that in your job, if you're being lazy in your job, then you're going to get fired. You have to go look for a new job. And if you do that in your business will fall apart, and you'll have to go get a job or start another business. So if you're a good hard worker, if you are very dependable, can be counted on, and are willing to rely on yourself more, then you can run a business. It's not that much harder, really.
Absolutely. Which really gets back to the question that you started with, which is, what are the problems, the questions, the difficulties a lot of businesses run into? And really, there's truly 6 steps to growing a business. The very first step is we call it mastery. What mastery is about is it's the foundation. It is the way a business has to establish itself in order to remove any chaos from the works. So a lot of people, when they think business, my first thing I have to do is I have to get customers, because customers are going to buy my product, and my product is going to give me the revenue that I need in order to succeed in this business. But if you have chaos at the foundational level, it doesn't matter how many customers you have. It could be that the more customers you have, the more difficulties you have, because it just creates more chaos and more turmoil. So in the area of mastery that we need to focus on, we have multiple portions of that mastery. The first one is destination mastery. Just like everyone, most people have probably heard the concept of, if you don't know where you're going, it's unlikely you're gonna get there. Okay. Okay. Say the first step when I wound up coming here to meet with you, Curtis, is like, okay, I know your address. I'm going to put that into my map. And guess what? I got here. Well, destination mastery is the same thing. When you start a business, you have to know why you're starting the business. What are your goals? What are your aspirations? What is this business going to do for you? What is this business going to do for your customers? What is the business going to do for your clients? And you really have to understand that down to a very fine level in order to really know what you have to do in order to get to that point. So if you don't have that destination mastery in mind, it's highly unlikely your business will ever get you to the things that you want to get. Most people, when they start a business, they want some sort of freedom, or maybe they, like I was saying before, they make the best widget in the world, so they want to get the widget out to the world. They're very passionate about it. But to do that, you really have to focus on the destination first. So once you focus on the destination, did you have any questions on?
I was just going to kind of iterate with that too, just to say that that goes into the goal setting idea of knowing the end result. Where do we want to get with our business? A lot of people, and this is very common, especially in the trades areas. You work for somebody else and you think, I could do it better than they could. Mm-hmm. So then you start your own job, you go out, you get your business license, you go, do all the things you need to do to start your business, and then you just get started. And like you said, I think people get into that trap of, I just got to go get sales. I just got to bring people, get people coming in the door to do things. But once they come in the door, now you've got to fulfill the obligation, whether that's buying a product, so you have to have a product built and ready for them to buy, or you're fulfilling a service for them, so you've got to do that service, and then you get paid for that. And so you've got all those things you've got to worry about. If it's a product, then there's inventory that you're going to have to deal with, and then your manufacturing and all that process you have to deal with to keep enough product coming in so that you can keep your customers happy. But they get into a trap with that because they are thinking, I just got to keep this running. If I can keep the balls in the air, that's all I got to do, is just keep the balls in the air. And that's not what you do to build a business, is keep those balls in the air. Obviously, you have to start somewhere, and sales is an easy way to start. There's a logic to saying, I need to make money, so I need to get customers.
Absolutely.
But once you've got the customers, now you've got to think about your inventory management, service, quality of service, your customer service, follow-up, all those other things that start to come in. And so you need to put some pieces in place that'll help you to do that. That's working on your business, not just working in your business. And that goal setting helps, because if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what the goal is that you're going to reach, like I need to get this many sales or this many customers or this much recurring revenue monthly or whatever it is, if there's nothing to focus you, then you're at the whim of whatever comes your way.
Absolutely.
And that's that's, again, you're just juggling balls.
Right.
And so if you have that goal, you can say, okay, I get to this certain point, I can hand that ball to somebody else. Get to this point, I can hand that ball to somebody else. If I get to here, I get to move my manufacturing over here, I get better discounts, whatever. So, but like you said, you've got to have you got to know, I'm here and I want to get over here, and how do I make that work, basically.
Right. And one of the key phrases to remember when you do that is, build it with the end in mind. So if you don't know what the end is, you can't build it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next area of mastery,
sure, go ahead.
So the next area of mastery is time mastery. And I say time mastery specifically because a lot of people use the term time management. And they think time management is critical. And the matter of fact is that there's no such thing as time management. It's so non-essential it does not even exist. We all have the same amount of time every day. The time doesn't change. We can't manage that. The only thing that we can manage is ourselves and the decisions we make and the priorities of how we make those decisions. So time mastery, is truly all about self-mastery. Mastering the decisions you make, mastering the priorities that you make, that you set to make those decisions, so that you never ever walk into tell somebody that I didn't do it because I didn't have enough time. The truth of the matter is we all have the same amount of time. So if anyone ever says, or if you hear anybody ever saying I didn't have enough time, what they are actually saying is, I chose to do something different.
Yeah, it's a priority issue, really.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's true. Well, and I've used that a lot in my business to think about that. I don't have. Anytime I find myself saying I don't have enough time to do this or that, I stop myself and go, wait a minute. Not about time. It's priority. I can get done whatever I need to get done. Mm-hmm. So there's a reason I'm prioritizing this above that. What is that? And that gets me into that conversation of what really is my priority. And then I started thinking about, well, okay, this is a priority. Okay, let's get that done and get it out. Oh, but you know what? I could be done with this in like 5 minutes, and this is going to take me about 2 hours to do. So maybe I'll hurry and get this done, knock it out, and then I'll come over and do this.
Right.
So it's that prioritization. Mm-hmm. And this is something I found in my business, and all the time I've been self-employed, really, that prioritization isn't about setting necessarily just a plan in place. Do this, then do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. It's about adjusting and adapting things, because you never know, things change sometimes. I have a list of tasks every day that I go through. I don't necessarily prioritize them. I just need to get them done. Mm-hmm. And so I'll focus on those and work through those. But sometimes things come up. Maybe there's a problem with our software, and so I've got to go in and fix some issues there. Or a client forgot to tell me that they have something going on, so I need to get my team in place so we can help them with that, or whatever. Right. Sometimes situations come up. And so we have to be able to adapt that, because it's not necessarily changing our time, but it's looking at our priorities.
Right. Absolutely.
And looking at that better.
There's a concept that I truly believe I believe it's one of the more powerful concepts that's out there in mindset change, and that is, we call it the point of power. Okay. There is a point where above that point you're powerful, below it you're unpowerful. And that point is, above it is ownership, accountability, and responsibility.
Nice.
Okay. When you're taking ownership, accountability, and responsibility, you have control and you have power of the environment around you. Below the point of power is blame, excuses, and denial. When you're in blame, excuses, and denial, what you're saying is, this is not my fault, it's that person's fault, or that person's, or whatever. And that's giving the power to the other party, the other person. So as a business owner, the only way to take control of the business is to stay above that point of power. So when I'm saying the statement of, I didn't have enough time to do that, that's below the point of power. When you say, I chose to do something else, that's above the point of power. My priorities were different. If it upsets somebody else that something didn't get done, you're accepting responsibility for that being upset, because you're saying, I really had something else to do that was more important.
Yeah, and that's important, and it's important to be able to acknowledge that.
Exactly.
I think, because I know for me, I just have a list of stuff to do, mm-hmm. and it's honestly extremely rare if I ever make it through that whole list in a day.
Absolutely.
There's just so much between disruptions or other things that come my way. I can sit down and go, okay, here's what I want to do. I've got a focus idea. I've got to get these things done. And then a bunch of emails come in from clients, and I've got to help them out with stuff. or other things come up. So maybe there's a big news cycle that we have to post on because we do social media.
Absolutely.
And like January 6th, oh man, everything went out the window.
I might have sent you some of those emails at some point.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. I mean, that's just the nature of it.
It is.
So, but what I've done is because I follow the GTD, getting things done methodology on goal setting. What I do is if I get to the end of the day and I don't have things done, then I just say, okay, what is the next available day I can do that? And then I'll reschedule those things over.
Yes.
And admittedly, I've got a few items that have been rolling for like a month now or two down the road. But again, they haven't risen in priority yet.
Right.
They're important, but they're not a priority.
Right.
Basically. So other things are becoming more important than them, so they just get pushed to the side. But eventually I start to get caught up. There's those times where if you keep that pressure going, you keep working hard and doing things, you eventually get to a point where you can catch up a little bit more, and then I can say, that is a priority. That one rises up now. Or, that becomes more important because there's a change that happened. That one is a higher priority, so I'm going to put that one in.
Absolutely.
So a couple of great things for you to help you in your business, like we've talked about, is of course know where you're going. What is that goal? What is the outcome that you want to accomplish? Because that'll help you have that focus. And then when you have focus, you want to look at your priorities. How do I prioritize things and organize myself to go that direction? So once you've got direction, now you've got to make a plan to get there, basically. And then realize as you go through that plan, you're going to have problems and challenges and issues. And so look like what Frank was talking about with the point of power. Are you going to take that responsibility and make it happen for yourself, or just go, that's not my job? I'm not going to do that. That's actually one thing that helped Andrew Carnegie get into the railroad business, is that idea of taking responsibility. Many people don't realize the story of Andrew Carnegie. Well, even to get started, when he was a young man, back then, one of the common jobs was running telegrams to people, and it was a 100% commission job. So a bunch of boys would sit around in the telegraph office waiting for a message to come in, and then the telegrapher would sit there with a little machine, and he'd write out the message, and then he would hand it to one of the boys, and the boys would run the delivery to whoever it was, and then that person would pay them, and then they'd bring the money back and split it with the telegrapher, basically. So they would get a little commission. The bulk of it would go to the telegrapher, the owner of the business.
Right.
And Andrew Carnegie realized, because there's all these boys, and he was kind of a smaller kid, he didn't get picked very often to run these things. The other boys who were always trying to talk to the telegrapher and get in buddy with him were getting more jobs. So he realized, I'm going to be out. So he could have completely said, they're not fair, they're terrible, they hate me, I hate this job, this is a terrible job, I'm not making money at it, I'm gonna go do something else, it's their fault I'm not making any money at this, I gotta go do something else. And he could have quit and left.
Absolutely.
He totally could have. But what he did was he actually put himself in a position where he said, I am going to figure out a way to make this better. And so what he did, unbeknownst to the other boys, is he learned Morse code. So as the telegrapher is writing the message down, he can still hear it in the other room, and so he's writing the message down himself. So by the time the telegrapher grabs that message and turns to hand it to a boy, Andrew Carnegie's out the door already on his way to deliver it. He cut the telegrapher out completely and learned how to do it himself. And so so he didn't, rather than say, this is somebody else's fault, I'm going to blame all them for my failure at this, he learned how to go to the next level. He took it upon himself to be more responsible. And he learned telegraphy. And so what did that mean? When the owner of the business realized that this little kid learned Morse code on his own, he made him the telegrapher, which was being paid more money than the runners. And so he was now handing the jobs to the kids, basically, because he learned how to do that.
Right.
And then that actually led to him getting into the still business or railroad business, because it was on a weekend. He was running the telegraph office, and there was nobody there. He was just there to kind of help relay messages and things. At that time, the railroads used telegraphs to signal where they were, was the track number they were on, which direction they were going. They would have messages sent out. So they used the telegraph system to keep track of where the trains were, and then they would just relay that back to the headquarters.
Yeah.
He was listening to these messages as they come across the line, and he realized there's two trains on a collision course with each other. One was a train just full of like cargo and stuff, and the other one was a train full of passengers. And he knew they were probably going to hit on a mountain pass where they're going to roll down the hill, no survivors. It's going to be a horrible situation.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is by the time he could get that message written down or get it relayed out to the right people to get it done, and then they get that message back, they'll be past the point where they can get a message, and they won't be able to communicate with these trains anymore, which means they're SOL. There's nothing they could do at that point. So he knew that the original route, that is, the time it would take to get the message through, is going to take too long. So he took it upon himself to reroute the passenger train. And he sent a message as if he was the I don't remember what they called it at the time, but if he was, there was a person that it was their job to keep the trains on course and where they're going.
Or something.
Something like that, yeah. So he took it upon himself to pretend he was that person. He relayed a message to the passenger train to switch tracks to go this other way, because he had a map of the railroad tracks in the office so he could help. And so they switched, and that route, it saved their lives, but it added like another 3 hours to the journey. And so everybody missed their connecting trains. They got into the station late. All the passengers were pissed, and they were going after the railroad company to get their money back. So the railroad company says, "Why were you late? What's going on with this?" The engineer says, "You guys sent me a message to go this other route, which took longer." And they're like, "We didn't send the message. What's going on?" So they went into, they figured out it was a telegraph machine, this one little station that sent the message. So the train, the owner of the train yard comes out to talk to Andrew Carnegie, and Andrew's boss, and says, "Why in the heck did you do this? You single-handedly cost me millions of dollars." And he says, "No, I saved you millions of dollars, because these two trains were coming in," and he showed him the message thread and said they were on a collision course. And I could see it on the map, and it would take too long to relay the message to you guys to get it back, to get it to them. So I made the decision to reroute them so that there would be no deaths. And as soon as the train owner realized this, Andrew Carnegie got a job in the rail yard, working with trains. And that's kind of the beginning of his empire of Carnegie Steel and rail and everything else. So instead of blaming other people or going, "It's not my job, it's not my responsibility, I'm going to let this run," knowing he could have made a difference, he decided to just take action and make a difference.
Without a doubt. When he could have done nothing and he would not have been blamed.
Yeah, no one would have said a thing about it. So those are some things to help you with your business to think about. And if you want, put in the comments whether you've used some of these kinds of principles and ideas for your business, and let us know what you think about these types of ideas. We'll talk to you later.
Definitely.